Well, hey, hello. Welcome to Kankakee Podcast, where we talk about the people and places of Kankakee County. I'm Jake Lamore, and hope you're doing well. We're releasing this just before Christmas on December 23rd, so I hope you got all your Christmas shopping done by now, and you're doing your wrapping. Or maybe you're way ahead of the game, you got all the wrapping done. Or maybe you're listening to this in the future and it's like the middle of July and you're sweating your butt off, hoping you can jump into the Kankakee River to cool off this weekend. But regardless of whenever you're listening to this episode, thank you so much for doing so. This is the 10th edition of Bill Yonka's Yarn Factory Listeners that you are about to listen to. This was recorded live on Tuesday, December 10th at Flanagan's Irish Pub in the basement of the Majestic in downtown Kankakee. And the stories you're about to hear are pretty interesting. Some of them you may be familiar with, actually. If you're a hardcore fan of Kankakee podcasts, there are two stories on this episode that have actually already been told on the podcast before. But what's different this time is that these people are telling these stories in front of a live audience. And that makes all the difference, especially when you've got someone like Mitch Mitchell, who tells the famous story of his Super Bowl Adam Levine meme that went viral in 2019. Telling that story in front of a live audience, everyone was just dying with laughter. So we're going to hear his story again. Also, Bri Haug. You might remember Bri from the episode where I got tattooed while I was interviewing her. Well, she tells her story on this episode as well, in a little bit different of context. And actually, there's some pieces of her story that she tells on this episode that's a little different from the episode she was on previously. I'm also excited to welcome back Broke Dusty to this episode. He was on the episode with Hollywood Harwell from the All In Show when we had Ryan and Broke Dusty on to talk about their podcast here in Kankakee County called The All In Show. And the fourth storyteller we're going to hear from on this Yarn Factory Listeners episode is Andy Stevens. He has a hilarious story about being young and playing with fireworks. And as you can imagine, it did not end well. So those are the four storytellers you're going to hear from on this episode. I want to give a shout out to Bill Yonka, the Kankakee Public Library, Flanagan's, and the Daily Journal for letting us collaborate with them on this monthly event. So without further ado, let's get to the 10th edition of Yarn Factory Listeners. I should mention that Broke Dusty is the first storyteller we are going to hear from today. He tells the funny story about how he got his butt kicked by an older woman in boxing.
What's up, y'all? How y'all doing? Well, my name is Broke Dusty. Well, I go by Broke Dusty, but my real name is Mitchell Ledbetter. My father's name is Mitchell Ledbetter, and my mother's name is Sherry Carr. So I don't know if y'all know her, but I'm from here, from Kankakee, been here forever. I love the city. So I got a quick story about one of my good friends right here, Popcorn, if y'all could turn in, right here sitting down. The premise of the story is we all meet people who, at first when you meet them or when you see them, you think they don't know what they're talking about, but they got a good way of telling you, like, yeah, I know what I'm talking about. So I don't know if y'all familiar with McBroom Park, but it's over by the high school. So we always play basketball over there. We got a good friend named Tone who played with us. So every day after school, we would ride, go play basketball, have a good little time. And this time, a lady pulls up, some sweats, cool, chilling, cool little walk. And there's about 20 guys out there, so we all looking like, who is that? And a lot of them knew who she was, but I didn't know her. It was my first time seeing her. So she shake everybody's hand, say, hey, my name is Popcorn, such and such. And we playing basketball, and we sitting on the side, and she telling everything that's going on in the game. He gonna miss. He can't dribble. He can't jump. Stuff like that. And everything she's saying, she right. So I'm like, how she know? So one game we had to play against each other. So I'm thinking, she a lady, and I'm 19, 20. I'm finna run around this court on her, right? So everything I did, she called out, and I ain't make no shot that game. So fast forward to at the end of the game, usually when we walk up on each other, we kind of, square up like we about to box. So she was like, oh, you know something about boxing? So I'm like, yeah, I know a little something. So she like, well, one day we could spar. You know what I'm saying? I'll show you a little something. So as soon as she said spar, Tone came up to me and was like, hey, man, she's the boxing Olympics. So y'all keep that in mind as I'm talking, right? So I ain't think nothing of it. I'm like, okay, that's what's up. She did Olympics. So I'm like, yeah, you can come to the crib, come to the basement, and I had like a little boxing setup. I used to train out here. So I'm like, okay, we can go ahead and do a little something. So she come to the house, and first thing I'm doing, I'm wrapping my hands. So first thing she say was, well, no, you need to spread your fingers out and keep your wrist straight because you got to wrap it good. And me not thinking she boxing the Olympics, she know this already. So I'm just still in my own little head like, man, I'm about to tear this lady up. So I get my hand wrap done. She wrap her hands up, and I remember she had these black gloves, because that's all I saw. But I get to that. So we square up, the bell ring, ding, ding, and I'm just, moving real cool. And she had this little bounce to her. And at first she was smiling, but then she got the frowning up. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I can't tell y'all how bad she whooped my that night. It was about a good 10 minutes of straight beat up action. And I don't know if y'all familiar with boxing, but getting punched in your head while thinking of trying not to get punched in your head is not a good feeling. So my lady was there too, so she was watching, so it was just all bad. So later on we get done, we sitting there, I'm unwrapping, they all talking over there, and she was just like, well, whenever you get done, we can always get back. We can spar again, just let me know when you're ready. And this had to be in 2011? We ain't sparred since. So, I know mine is a little quick, but I say all that to say, whenever you meet somebody, even if they look unassuming, even if they look like they don't know what they're talking about, if they tell you something, listen, because 9 times out of 10, they got a good way of showing you that they know what they're saying.
Let's give another big round of applause. Broke Dusty, thank you for sharing that with us. And make sure to look for the All-In show, and he does a great job with that. And our next storyteller is someone I thought, it would be really cool if she told a story. Because she is a mom, a tattoo artist, a business owner, and somebody who's part of so many people's stories of the art they have on their body. And what I think is really cool is that you can see it, and I can say, I know who did that. I have a feeling I know who did that. And Bri Haug is going to tell us a story next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bri Haug. Some of you may know me as a local tattoo artist or owner of Electric Lady Lounge. When I was asked to participate tonight, I was extremely excited. That then quickly followed with a huge wave of uncertainty, my exact words being, So I called my sister in a panic and I said, what the hell am I going to talk about? Do I talk about my cancer story again? So I did what every tortured artist does. I retreated to a dimly lit room with my headphones and listened to Princess Leia's theme from Star Wars: A New Hope on repeat. That's when it dawned upon me, why the hell would I not talk about the most impactful story of my life? So this time I'll share it deeply. This is the story of me. So I graduated from BBCHS in 2007. I spent my 20s navigating through many various paths, many long dead ends, really. I briefly attended Olivet and participated in their ROTC program. Didn't finish that. I worked at Disney World twice. Mickey Mouse pays like And then I went to art school for illustration and dropped out. So I decided to come back home to Kankakee County and reset. It was then that I met my now husband Mitchell and fell in love. Our life together was really simple and humble. We were barely getting by. I was a bookseller at our local Barnes & Noble, and he was working with books as well at Baker & Taylor and Moments. And then shortly after, I became pregnant, and our son Harrison was born, and life was perfect. I remember one day Mitchell came home with a bouquet of flowers and told me that he had just been hired at CSL Behring. This changed our lives. We felt like we were really adulting. We had bought our first home. We were raising our first child. We were really doing it. And then while I was still on maternity leave, I decided to pick up my art supplies and to start drawing again. And then another opportunity presented itself, this time for me. My art was noticed and I was offered an opportunity for a tattoo apprenticeship. And this was my dream job since I was a little girl. In my eyes, it was the equivalent to being a rock star. So as the stars were aligning, and finally I was able to take this unpaid opportunity due to my husband's new job, it felt like I was just striving. I was in my first year of tattooing, my first year of motherhood. Everything felt perfect. And then something started to change. I began feeling very unwell. This led to an emergency visit to the ER where I found out that I had an ulcer. It made sense. I was working really hard to pursue my dreams, and I thought nothing of it. It wasn't until a week later that the phone rang, and I received a call from my doctor. Hi, Brianna. We are calling to let you know that your biopsy results came back, and we are sorry to inform you that you have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, a rare blood cancer. In that moment, my world had crashed. I felt like I had finally found my place in the world, and I couldn't understand how this was happening to me at 29 years old. It took my breath away. I was inconsolable. Hearing that C word felt like a death sentence. For weeks, I struggled. I vividly remember one test in particular. This would be the test that would determine how much my cancer had spread. So I was injected with a substantial amount of radiation, the equivalent to 3 years of sun exposure. And just as I go to get my scan, the power in the hospital went out. The doctors had informed me that I only had 1 hour to still do this test. 10 minutes passed, then 30. I prayed, and then the hour came, and I was devastated to learn that I had to wait another 2 weeks before I would get these answers. Weeks later, I learned from my plan of action. I was told to do 20 sessions of radiation therapy. This means that every weekday, for 1 month, I went to the cancer center and would receive radiation therapy. I was always the youngest person there. The first tattoos I received during my apprenticeship were 4 tiny dots administered by my radiologist, so they knew where to direct my radiation therapy. It felt like I was in a sci-fi movie. There was a machine spinning around me and static. It was wild. I had to endure a lot of pain during those treatments. The doctor told me that you might start feeling things by week 2. That was not the case for me. Starting day 1, it was very painful, and by the end of those treatments, I could barely walk or breathe for long periods of time. And then I had to wait 6 months to see if it worked. I knew that I couldn't be spending those months in despair. I knew I had to get back to my art and be present for my family. I told myself, fake it till you make it. And so that's what I did. As my strength slowly returned, I started meditation and began taking daily walks, accompanied by the soundtrack of Star Wars, because it felt like I was battling some great force within me. For my fellow nerds, as the wise Master Yoda once said, there must be, I'm not going to do the whole quote like that. There must be both dark and light, for balance sustains all life. I needed to stay busy. I needed to redirect my focus. I returned to my tattoo studies, immersing myself in my craft. Working and connecting with people is so incredibly healing. There was a new fire in me. I was no longer the same woman I was a year ago. I was so fortunate to be welcomed immensely by this very community. The minute I began tattooing, my books were constantly full and busy, and I was doing it. I was sharing my art with the world. I found my purpose. After the looming countdown of my radiation results were no longer my sole focus, I was using these feelings to shift my energy to be grateful for the opportunities given to me. And 6 months then came. The sign I had been searching for arrived. During my appointment with my oncologist, I asked, "Why did this happen to me?" They responded, "It was simply bad luck, your lightning strike." That moment shifted everything. My cancer transformed from being a burden into a gift, one of perspective and resilience. And at that same appointment, I learned I was cancer-free. Thank you. And next month, I look forward to celebrating 6 years of being cancer-free, and I have been officially deemed cured. And with that so-called lightning strike, in the depths of darkness, amidst a storm that can engulf you, lightning strikes, illuminating the sky and electrifying us. And a couple years later, the Electric Lady was born, the first woman-owned tattoo shop in Kankakee, which has earned the titles of Best Tattoo Studio and Best Small Business for 3 consecutive years. I now spend my days engaging with people in our community and clients from across the country, sharing connections, stories, vulnerability, and art. Having experienced the feeling of losing control over my own body, I now play a part in helping others reclaim theirs. And what was once the worst thing that has ever happened to me has become the best gift, a new way to live. My business, Electric Lady Lounge, has evolved from a small studio that was once located in this very building, just my sister and I, to a now expanded shop of 6 artists. Our work not only offers traditional tattoos, but also paramedical tattooing, including areola reconstruction for breast cancer survivors. That should be towards my sister. My art has now expanded into activism, promoting women's rights, equality, and LGBTQ rights, the importance of mental health while also bringing resources and community support to Kankakee County. So, the next time you feel lost or hopeless or in the dark, take a moment to pause and appreciate your journey. I encourage you to share your story with yourself and with others repeatedly. After all, that's how legacies are created. And if all else fails, put on a new hope.
Thank you, Bri. Let's give Bri a big round of applause. Thank you so much. Our next storyteller is someone who is relatively new to Kankakee, but once he became a person here in Kankakee, he really dug in and said, this is my place. And I hear stories from him all the time, but we have a kind of a unique relationship that I'll let you in on a secret. So if you see Mitch, our next storyteller's name is Mitch. His real name's not Mitch. The other storyteller, his real name is Mitch. Does not go by Mitch. This one, you can call him Mitch. His name says Kevin, but nobody calls him Kevin. You call him Mitch. And if you ever have a 16-ounce beer, what do you call those? A tall boy. So now the idea goes, if you have a really short drink, what would you call that? A shot. Well, yeah, it doesn't sound so friendly as a shot. As a short boy. You just call it a short boy, a little guy. So if you're ever on the rocks on Station Street in Kankakee and you see this next guy and you say to him, any reference to get somebody to say the word short or something short, say, who was that one basketball player in the NBA? Was it Muggsy Bogues or was it Spud Webb? They're very, very short. And then you guys have shots. And it's usually Malort. Does anybody like Malort? Well, with that, I'll bring up to the stage somebody who is still relatively new in the last several years to Kankakee, but has made this his home and has really embraced our community. Let's welcome to the stage, Mitch.
Couple tough acts to follow there, but I will do my best. Thank you, Bill. As he said, my name is Kevin Mitchell, but everyone here calls me Mitch. And a few years ago, in February of 2019, I went to bed drunk and woke up famous. And so, how exactly did that happen? Good question. This is the story of Coors Light, Malort, football, and perhaps the most seen man boobs in America. And so this all went down on Super Bowl Sunday. I had been up at OTR enjoying my Sunday afternoon like I do most of my Sunday afternoons with some Colorado Kool-Aids and a shot or two of Malort, or the Devil's Nectar as some call it. And with it being a Sunday and Monday being a work day, I figured I'd actually go home and catch the game itself from the comforts of my couch. And it wasn't a very interesting game as far as I remember. I honestly don't even remember what teams were playing. I did flip back and forth between the game and the Harry Potter marathon on Freeform for a bit, because I'm actually more of a Quidditch fan than a football fan. And at some point shortly before the halftime show, I ended up back on the game. And like I said, I don't remember the football, but I do remember the halftime show all too well. And it's Maroon 5 that's playing, which is kind of a weird choice, in my opinion, because I know they've been around forever, and they've got some, popular songs on the radio, but are they anybody's favorite band? Like, who are the Maroon 5 fans? And the concert's pretty normal at first, and it took a really strange turn when Adam Levine started stripping. There's no better word for what he was doing. So suddenly there is a half-naked man who looks like a Chipotle bag just on every television screen in every living room in America. And this guy is covered in the most random assortment of tattoos that you can possibly imagine. And the most prominent one is right here. It just says California right across his stomach. He looked like he should be a Latino thug in a Fast and the Furious movie. Like, this tattoo does not belong on this man. And so he's gyrating across the television screens, and my first thought is, holy I need to make fun of this right now. And I jumped off my couch faster than a startled cat and went straight to the kitchen drawer that I keep all my random stuff in. I'm not an organized person, so it took me a minute to find the Sharpie that I was looking for. But I go straight to the bathroom, take my shirt off, and go to work. And have you ever tried writing on your own stomach, upside down, in front of the bathroom mirror? Of course you haven't. You're all normal people. So I'll tell you a little bit about it. The I is easy. It's a line and two other little lines. The L's are easy. The N, not easy. So my first attempt at that was upside down and backwards. But little soap and water, wash that off, got it right the second time. And the S was hard too, but I learned my lesson with the N and I got the S down right. So now I've got Illinois just written right here. Right here. And I grabbed my beer, took a chug, took a selfie, straight to Facebook. And those of you that know me, I'm always putting dumb memes on Facebook, and it's usually just the same 50 idiots liking and ha-haing all my posts. And that's really all I was expecting with this one. But within just a few minutes, I started noticing something kind of weird. The likes and the shares are starting to be names that I don't recognize. And there's a lot of them. So by the time the game was over, it'd been shared over 1,000 times, and there's no sign of slowing down. And I just remember thinking to myself, oh crap, I think I just did something. And I wake up in the morning to more notifications on my phone than I've ever seen in my life. Facebook, Instagram, text messages, everything's blowing up. And the first one I open is a text from an old high school friend who I have not talked to since high school. I was 27 at the time. And he says, dude, I just saw you on WGN News. My response to that is, what the And so at this point, there's 20,000 shares on the post, and it's making the rounds on not only Facebook, but also Reddit, Instagram, Twitter. I don't even have Twitter, so I don't know how that happened. But it's Monday. I got to go to work. And I'm a plumber. My first service call of the day was at a house up in Beecher. And the homeowners had the news on in the living room. I think it was more for background noise than anything else. But at one point, I walked out to get something from my truck. And when I walked back in, I was on their TV. I don't think they recognized me. But now I'm realizing, oh yeah, Mike was not kidding. He did just see me on the news. And I decided to go do lunch that day at Buffalo Wild Wings, and you guessed it. I walked in and everybody there had seen it. 2 customers even asked the bartender if I was that guy from the internet. And then they stopped me for a selfie. I'd only been famous for a few hours at that point, and it's some sort of really ugly version of Taylor Swift. Like, I don't know what's going on right now. And so the post continued to grow pretty exponentially. And with that, so did the list of shows that people are telling me they saw me on. Local news broadcasts in Florida, Good Morning America, you name it, I was on it. I did an interview with Jake Lamore for his radio show at the time. And another one right after that with the Daily Journal. And that one made the front page of the paper with the headline, Kankakee man goes shirtless, then viral. And my mom still has that hanging up in her office because she said of all the ways I could have made the front page of the paper, this one wasn't that bad. And so this continues for a little while, and if there's one thing the internet loves, it's trends. So it didn't take long before I started seeing other full-size men from across the country writing their home states on their own beer bellies. And somebody even started a group, and in no time at all, we had a Fathom Levine from all 50 states. And even some Canadians joining in on the fun. So after, 2 or 3 days of this madness, I got a message in my Facebook inbox. And at this point, I'd already been getting a lot of these, mostly from women with questionable choices in men, and even a few from men with questionable choices in men. But this one was different. It was a producer from the Wendy Williams show asking if I am indeed the man behind the meme and if they have my permission to feature it on the show. And I've already been all over TV by this point, but none of these shows had actually contacted me, so I couldn't tune in myself or, watch them. And so I told this producer that he could definitely feature me on the show, and he told me when it would air and everything, so stand-up guy. And for probably the first time in my life, I tuned in to watch an episode of Wendy Williams. And Wendy, turned out she was in rehab at the time. So the episode was being guest hosted by Jason Biggs, which is the actor who plays the main role in American Pie. So him and a show correspondent go through their their post-big game meme roundup, pausing to chuckle at me and my resemblance to Mr. Levine. And it's pretty surreal to see someone who famously had relations with a pie poke fun at you on national television. And so that was 2019, and viral fame changes quickly through the years. TikTok wasn't the cultural thing that it is now, and Facebook was kind of still at the top of the social media game. So my 15 minutes of fame didn't come with the 15 minutes of fortune that today's accidental internet stars stumble onto. I didn't get a merch deal. I wasn't flown out to LA to start a podcast. I guess you could say that I walked so that the Tua girl could hawk.
Thank you, Mitch. Living up to expectations. It's crazy when you know exactly what the story is, but you don't know exactly what the story is. That's what's fun about this. Again, if you want to share a story at some point, there's a sign-up sheet over there where you put your name down. We'll get in touch with you for a future month. If you have a story that involves the Kankakee River, we're doing those next month. It's all river stories. And our final storyteller of the night is Andy Stevens. Yeah, you can start clapping already. Andy he works at Shapiro, and he's an actor, he's a helper, he's a dog owner, he's a dad, And he's just like one of the most genuine people I know. Let's welcome to the stage Andy Stevens.
All right, so as Bill said, my name is Andy. If you don't know me, I did grow up in Herscher, and I live in Bourbonnais with my wife, Sarah, right now. We have 2 daughters who live in Nashville. Ellen's 24, and Anna is 21. And it's crazy, but now we can all have a legal drink together. I also am a dog dad. I have a dog son. His name is Otis. He's a goofball, but he's a good boy. Yes, I have worked at Shapiro for 24 years, hopefully just a few more, and then I'll be retired. But I do love acting. Got into acting because my daughters kind of encouraged me to about 10 years ago. Started off with Mary Poppins. Some of my favorite productions, I did The Producers a couple months ago. Thank you. Really appreciate that if you did come to that. Thank you very much. I was Brian, the set designer. And then a few years back, my other favorite production was Spam-A-Lot, where I played, thank you, Lancelot. So yes, if you were wondering if people are talking about the typecasting, yes, it's getting to be a problem. But I'm not here just to talk about myself. I'm actually here for a confession, okay? This could be the first in a series of confessions entitled, I'm Sorry, Mom. It all started in March 1978, okay? My mom welcomed into the world a beautiful blue-eyed baby boy. That's me. Okay? 2 years later, my brother Zach, who's here tonight. And then 2 years after that, my brother Ben. So 3 boys. Okay. And my mother worked full-time in Kankakee at Riverside as a respiratory therapist, and every night we had a home-cooked meal on the table, and so I love thanking her for that, so thank you, Mom. She's right back there. Thank you, Mom. So 3 boys, we made a lot of memories. One of my favorite memories is Saturday morning cartoons. We all grew up with them, right? We'd grab our bowl of cereal. I think we had Smurfs, we had He-Man, but we watched cartoons. We watched Voltron and Thundercats. But He-Man was one of our favorites. We had to have the action figures. Probably had about 20 or 30 of them. We had to have Castle Grayskull, of course. And we also had Snake Mountain with the tinny microphone that sounded terrible. Right. But we also had some mischievous memories as well. One of my mom's favorite to tell is we went through a few record players growing up because as boys who loved Hot Wheels, we soon discovered that a spinning record player would shoot a car pretty far across the room. So those Eagles records got replaced by Hot Wheels. With 3 boys, too, there was some fights here and there. My brother Ben's not here tonight, but me and him get in a lot of physical fights and wrestling. I'd give him a sternum shot here or there, or a clavicle grab. I was much bigger than him at the time, and now he's 4 inches taller than me. But we also like to have as many boys do, a sword fight, where the 3 of us would stand around a toilet and fight with our pee streams. Probably our mother's least favorite game to clean up after. I mean, look at that mischievous smile. There's trouble coming. So, probably made you wait long enough. It's time for my confession. Growing up, we would always go out of town on the 4th of July. We were never here for Bonfield or KCC or anything. We would always go up to Wisconsin. There was this farm we went to with some distant relatives, and it was a cow farm, very unusual for us. Even though we grew up in Herscher, we didn't have a whole lot of exposure to farms. And it wasn't our favorite thing to do as boys because we wanted to be with our friends and stuff, but there were some distant cousins there that are about our age, so we could play baseball, basketball, tag, whatever, that once a year game of croquet that you just played once a year, you know. You had to dust it off to get it ready. And another thing I always remembered about that picnic, it was probably one of the very few times a year when we were allowed to have a can of pop. And I just remember they had... The can of pop was always the coldest when it was coming out of one of those old green metal Coleman coolers, right? Forget about the Yetis of the day. That's where it was at. But anyways, the year was 1994. It was Independence Day. And if some of you may recall, the United States was hosting the World Cup. And on that day exactly, they lost a heartbreaker to Brazil 1-0. So a little saddened by the loss, a little fed up, done playing baseball and tag and everything. We wanted to do something different. And I was 16. Zach was 14, and Ben would have been 11. We wanted to go into town. I just got my license a few months back. So we headed into town, which is about 5 minutes away. We found a park that had like basketball courts and tennis courts and playground equipment. And so we settled there. So us, me and my brothers, and we brought the cousins, there's like 3 or 4 of them along. They could play and have a good time. Change of pace from what was going on at the farm. We played basketball, tennis, whatever. Mostly we played argue, which is what 3 brothers do when sports are involved. And then the day was winding down. It was about time to head back to the farm. So we loaded up in the van, and this is when I came up with my brilliant idea. Okay, you see, in Wisconsin, fireworks are legal. So I had acquired a few packs of Black Cats. And if you're unfamiliar, a Black Cat is a pack of fireworks, about the size of a pack of cards. And there's 20 of them in there, about. And you light one wick, and all of them go off in succession, right? So my brilliant idea was, I'm going to get everybody in the car. I'm going to light these fireworks, and I'm going to toss them out the window, hit the gas in the gravel parking lot, do a Bernie, and take off into the sunset as the coolest guy in Wisconsin. That's not what happened. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here telling you this story. So as I sat in the driver's seat with all my younger passengers anxiously waiting, I pushed in that cigarette lighter, old school, right in the console, waited for it to heat up. So as it heated up, I opened the Black Cats and found the master wick, as you may, and waited. They're all waiting. So it pops out, okay? I'm ready. It's red hot. Touch it to the wick, burst of sparks, right? As any firework does. But if you've ever held a firework in your hand, the anxiety sometimes jumps a little bit higher than you expected it to, okay? So suddenly I was flush with fear, and so I went to toss the fireworks out the window. But in a panic, I hit the door and watched the firecrackers fall to the floor, the carpeted floor of our van. It was at this moment that my brothers and passengers realized that I had, in fact, no formal training in fight or flight situations. I chose flight. And I jumped out of the vehicle. That's the moment I remembered that I'd already shifted into drive. Because if you got a good plan, you got a hasty, quick getaway, right? So here I am, running next to a moving vehicle. Okay? Oh, forgot to mention, it was kind of on a hill. Got houses down that way, houses that way, playgrounds behind us. The van's headed this way, downhill, towards a ravine with trees and assorted shrubberies. So I'm running next to a van full of terrified young passengers. And I realize I need to do something because they're careening towards certain death, or at least a tow truck and some front-end damage. So I got up close to the door, grabbed that door handle, which was still luckily unlocked, right? Pulled it open, and jumped into that driver's seat like a young, white B.A. Baracus from the A-Team. I grabbed that steering wheel like a grizzled NASCAR veteran and slammed on that brake, tires grinding through the gravel just a mere few feet from that ravine. Of course, I was lauded with praise and words of gratitude from my anguished passengers. I think there was a idiot and a what the heck did you jump out for? But, I heard it as more heroic praise and such. As we headed back to the farm, nary a word was spoken as I continued to snuff out the smoldering carpet beneath my feet, which by God's grace was just a small spot that somehow luckily went unnoticed for the remainder of our ownership of that vehicle. Headed back to the farm, we loaded up, and we headed back to Illinois for the night. And that story stayed in Wisconsin until last summer, when I finally told my mother 30 years later. I'm sorry, Mom.
Thank you, Andy. Oh, well, that's a fun note to end on. Let's be safe with everything. Let's give Andy Stevenson a big round of applause.
I gotta tell you, I've never heard people laugh so hard at Yarn Factory listeners than when Mitch got up there and told his Super Bowl halftime show story. The place was just lit up with laughter, and it was just what I needed that night. Thank you again to Mitch for sharing his story again. Also to Bri Haug, Andy Stevens, and Broke Dusty. We also want to give a shout out to Bill Yonka, the Kankakee Public Library, Flanagan's Irish Pub, and the Daily Journal for collaborating with us on this episode. If you want to join us for a Yarn Factory Listeners live, you can join us at Flanagan's. We do this every second Tuesday of the month at Flanagan's Irish Pub in the basement of the Majestic in downtown Kankakee. We also want to give a shout out to our Patreon supporter, Teague Dreenan. Now, if you want your name announced on a future episode, you can sign up at patreon.com/Kankakee podcast. And without Teague's help and others of our Patreon supporters, we would not be able to do this show. Just like with our sponsors who help support Kankakee podcast, like Chicago Dough Company, Noble Dairy Queen Stores, Frank's Appliance Center and Sleep Source, Pig Gosh Engineering, King Music, Little Me Studio, Taco John's, D. Westfall Jewelers, and Edward Jones Financial Advisor, Adam Elroy. Kankakee Podcast is produced by the fine team at Pathfinder, a full-service marketing agency in downtown Kankakee. You can learn more at yourpathfinder.io. Our theme song is by Lupe Carroll. I'm Jake Lamore. Thank you for listening. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.